Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you for joining us at this Locus webinar. I'm Mehul Kapadia, Chief Revenue Officer here at Locus. We are a customer experience and dispatch management platform where we really help organizations globally to leverage their last mile delivery operations to unlock growth for their businesses. Today's webinar, I'm very pleased to be joined by KB Nagaraju, KBN as he's very fondly known in the industry. KBN has extensive 3 decades of experience across supply chain operations, customer engagement, setting up businesses, unlocking truly the value of e-commerce. And he's been working with BigBasket before joining us now at Locus as a strategic advisor. KBN has worked extensively with companies like Schenker, HP, Lenovo, and brings today to us, in the context of the webinar today, a lot of insights from the industry. So KBN, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mehul. Actually, it's wonderful. I'm very happy to join this webinar today.
Today's topic, what we are going to focus on is build versus buy. A very pertinent question in the industry, right? If you look at companies, whether you are a retailer or whether you're a shipper or you're a courier company or a 3PL yourself, in some sense, enterprises are now really grappling with the thing about, should we build it in-house or should we buy from SaaS platforms like us? And in that context, right, give me early thoughts from you, starting thoughts from you on what is the impact on customer experience, right? Especially when you look at building it in-house. And especially given the fact that you worked with companies like BigBasket, which is like a new age digital native, and on the other side, companies which have been very traditional, like TVS, that you worked with.
Thank you. That was a very interesting question. Going back to the fundamentals, there has been a significant change in the way the customer experience is being looked at these days. Customers have become more demanding and the expectations are going up. And initially, if you look at even digitally native companies like BigBasket, the emphasis was more on convenience, right? But more and more, as we ourselves have seen in BigBasket, customers are now asking for more delivery slots, more convenient way of picking their products, and better payment terms to be made available to them. And some of the new customers have even started looking at how we can deliver to them in a very sustainable way. So all said and done, I think the focus on customer experience is much more these days. And this is not true only in digitally native companies. Even B2B companies these days are looking at ways in which they can meet the expectations of their own clients, even if they have long-term contracts with them, in a much better way, in terms of meeting their expectations much better, faster, in a more sustainable way. I think in sum, I would say customer experience is very important these days than ever before.
No, I completely agree with you on that. So today, we're going to explore the topic of build versus buy as you do your technology decisions. How do you leverage the best of both worlds, right? In terms of choosing what are you going to develop in-house with your own tech teams, and what are you going to actually buy out there from technology providers who are specialists in their own domain, right? And figure out the best way by which you can then get the most out of your last mile delivery operations. As we do that, there are multiple factors that come into play. We will explore 5 of those today. The 5 key things which will help you make that decision for yourself and your business in the most optimal way. So KB, one of the key questions that keeps coming up, right, as I meet clients and prospects across the world, right, and typically whether you are a C-level individual tasked with, either deciding whether you want to invest in a technology, right, or you are a CIO or CTO having to make then the actual decision on it, is around the pace of innovation, right? Now, a lot of times there is a sense that actually if I build in-house, I have better control and I can actually make it go live in 5 days or 10 days, or I've absolute control over what it takes to develop it. Versus there is also this argument that the pace of innovation can be better if you are actually buying it from somebody who probably has productized the technology better. So what's been your experience? And especially I want to tap into your BigBasket experience, where you know almost set up the operations and you probably went through that journey yourself.
Okay, so actually, one of the key things in this topic actually is the how you're scaling and where does the innovation come in, right? As organizations scale their operations, especially the logistics operations, it is important that they have to start looking at their processes, because linearly adding resources is not going to be efficient, right? You have to look at some process gaps and start fixing them. And that's where innovation comes in. Now, for even innovation to work really, I mean, what is innovation after all? It's actually bringing some new idea and then making it work for solving your problem, right? So for doing that, many times technology becomes useful. So that means it's actually innovation enabled by technology, I would say. Now, but in large organizations, in general, what I found is that it's easier said than done. You know, the reason for that is they're actually busy with their own, roadmaps and then things that they anyway wanted to do, etc. So, if a particular function were to go and ask for something new, which is in the form of a feature or development, etc., or even full-fledged solution, oftentimes it becomes very difficult to prioritize that, right? So therefore, in large organizations, it is innovation part becomes a little more difficult actually. That's where I think buy becomes a better option. This is what I felt. Yeah.
And how do you see structurally a organization, a tech organization, can be built up in a way that buying also becomes easier? Because see, in all fairness, there becomes kind of a little bit of an internal conflict, right? If you are the technology team, which has its own resources, you have your skills, you probably feel you understand your operations, your company's operations, your workflows better, right? And hence you would typically tend to believe that my writing my BRD, the business requirements document, I'll be faster at it, right? Or sitting down with my software engineer to actually write the code, I'll be faster at it. How do you build your organization that you can now do the same with an external tech company or an external vendor or a partner?
Yeah, actually, you come to the core of this whole issue of build versus buy, right? See, in typical organizations, you're right that the organizations would have their own set processes, a system or a platform, something which is already working, and obviously the entire IT function or the team around that, including the product guys, engineering folks, will be very passionate about what they have done already, right? So therefore, the tendency is that they would better off building it themselves. But as I've said before, oftentimes it doesn't really work. The reason for that is the features or the development that is asked by a function, whether it is finance or operations or, for example, logistics, is such that it may not be in the mainstream of the customer facing application that the company is really working on. So therefore they won't get the priority. And even if they do, in certain unique situations, like the feature is so important, let's say from a market point of view, or it's a competitive advantage, or it gives some unique benefit which is long term, etc. What happens is they don't do a good job. This is what I've noticed. So it does get built, but not really as demanded by the function, and therefore it's like at the end of the day, the user functions are not really happy. This is what I've really noticed. I think that's where companies like Locus, who have got much better understanding of the function, let's say a logistics operation. Now, if you look at logistics operations also, now it's a multiple things, right? You have fulfillment, and you have to understand the orders and the nature of orders. Then you have hub operations. Then you have a whole host of transportation related, whether it is first mile, mid mile, last mile, and so on. So if you look at this kind of a complex logistics operations as a unit, right? I think that most companies will be better off looking at a by kind of an solution. Right. But having said, and we can talk about it more, it does work that in certain situations, companies can feel comfortable with building themselves as well, provided it is giving them a very unique and competitive advantage.
Very true. Very true. In fact, interestingly, that brings us to the second point, right? We said we'll discuss 5 factors. It actually brings us to the second point around experience and expertise, right? So kind of one of the things that I look at, right? See, at Locus, we solve it for about 200 clients globally, right? A full set of different industries, whether it's e-commerce or retail or FMCG or courier companies or manufacturing companies, and especially in different geographies. So whether it's Southeast Asia and Indonesia and Philippines or India or Saudi Arabia or Mexico or US. So because of that width of experience, the kind of use cases that we are able to solve for, we can almost then bring in that market knowledge back into the way we can solve a problem for one unique company, right? So in that sense, what's your take around that balance of experience and expertise? Because, of course, the organization also has its own internal expertise, right? So do you feel there is then that need of that open mindset where they look at companies like Locus to come in as consultants with the market experience and still adapt to the workflows of the company, of the organization?
No, absolutely. I mean, well said. I mean, the way you articulated, it does make sense. But what happens, as I said before, oftentimes is a company. It also depends on what stage of the company it is. Right? See, let's take it in 2 ways. Let's look at a large organization which has been in existence, which has built its IT platform over a number of years, and hopefully it has stabilized and it has got enough IT bandwidth. In such a situation, I think they will tend more to build it themselves, right? Even if it really gives them a competitive advantage or not. The reason being, they would somehow be comfortable that on 2 factors. One is they know how to integrate it with rest of the platform much easily, and secondly, there's not much of a change management as well, right? These are the 2 aspects based on which they could make a decision on it. But let's look at the other situation. Suppose if it is a slightly younger organization, they just started off, they're just about to scale, and they are a very energetic young company. And in such a situation, I think the tendency again would be to look at both ways, whether they should, in the interest of their own scaling, if they want to hit the market faster and they find some process gap or some solution gap somewhere, they might be tempted to look at their own peers or somebody who's with some unique solution and then try to buy it themselves. But they could also be building it themselves because they want to maintain the entire thing as a unique offering to the customer, probably with some IP built in and so on.
No, true. And actually, you mentioned change management. Funnily, if ever I get into a customer meeting and somebody asks me, who's your biggest competition, right? I tend to say it is change management, right? Because that's a real thing, right? I mean, on the floor, you have a certain experience and a certain way of doing things, right? So coming to your point then on if you have legacy systems or if you have legacy processes, right? And that's the third area I wanted to explore with you was around tech debt, right? Because, and both ways, right? We can look at both sides of the story. One is you could have your own internal integration systems you've customized over 10 years, 15 years, right? And hence there is a way you're doing it. Now, while that is a comfort zone, okay, isn't it good at sometimes to create a positive disruption yourself, right? By introducing an external expert, say somebody like Locus or maybe somebody else, right? Which actually brings in a lot of technology expertise in that specific domain, right? Because otherwise, you may build it once, you may get in somebody to help you build it at that time, or you may build it. But how do you keep at the cutting edge of that domain, right? And over a period of time, you would have created a tech debt, right? So what's your perspective on that?
No. This is a very, very important point actually. Many companies struggle with this, this whole issue of tech debt, because you have started with something, you have built it over a period of time. So, if I can say in a funny way, it becomes a monster, right? In some sense, and then and also to make it scalable, and a lot of things get built around it, redundancies, infra-related decisions, and so on and so forth. So it becomes, in some ways, an inflexible system, right? And therefore, if you have to do some changes, some new technologies have come in, like the way the low code, no code, AI, chat GPTs have come. How will you suddenly react now?
Yes.
Is a question that faces most of the CIOs and CTOs, right? So from that perspective, it's a difficult thing. And many companies have tried to, therefore what they have done is, after about 5 to 6 years of building the platform in a particular way, they do start certain parallel activities behind the scenes, like slowly cutting down the monster or the monolith into some microservices, one by one, customer facing, front end, then back end. Within back end also, you divide that into warehouse management or logistics or customer support. They do different microservices slowly with the interlinkages and so on, so that you are ready for the future. But then this is a very, very, only a few companies do it, not everybody does it. So that's where I think your question is very pertinent on how you can actually, let's say in a slightly peripheral activity, let's look at some company, which is a product owner. So they have to be worried more about the brand, manufacturing, what have you. But what about the back end? Yes. What about the distribution? Can they look at, for their distribution, completely an outside-in solution, right? Which can take care of the entire product from the time it is taken out from the, let's say, a factory or something, and then storing, and then delivering to B2B or B2C and so on. Can it be done by an outsider? And that can become possibly, like the way you mentioned, a change agent actually,
Right.
Because that company can bring in a lot more insights into this whole, in their own overall IT system. I do agree with you, yeah.
No, absolutely. And interesting you mentioned about all the different domains, right? Because at the end of the day, the technology function or the IT function is not just looking at it from a logistics operation standpoint, but they'll have everything from finance to HR to, lots of other functions. So the whole opportunity cost, right? And that's the fourth point that I wanted to bring up and discuss, that at the end of the day, every organization has finite resources. Resources in terms of people, and then resources in terms of money and budget, right? So there is that opportunity cost of where do I put my individual and my dollar or rupee in terms of investment, right? And how would you then balance that opportunity cost, right? How would you prioritize where should I be putting in that money and people?
Yeah. So this again is a very fundamental, issue facing companies when you are going for a decision between buy and build, right? How do you decide? And as you rightly come to that point, it's a cost, right? At the end of the day, what is the opportunity cost, right? Now, a company which is, let's say, already in business and and been in the business for a certain length of time, would one can assume that they already have some ERP or a working system for their key functions, which is customer acquisition, finance, and so on. But then what happens is, in the current scenario, especially over the last 4-5 years, compliance regulations in many countries are changing. India, for example, has brought in GST and so on. These are the situations where many organizations have gone into a bit of a problem, because they need to comply very quickly, and they may not have the internal bandwidth or the resources to do it. And therefore, what do you do? So therefore, one has seen, especially in Indian context, a lot of companies have come into the very niche area of, I can convert your entire financial, I can take out the data from some point and convert it completely GST compliant, or some tax compliant, and so on and so forth. So that is how some people have solved this. Then the other important aspect is the competition, especially if you look at e-commerce industry and all that. I mean, you have seen some new disruptions which have come in, right, due to instant gratification, quick commerce, and what have you.
Absolutely, I want everything now.
Exactly.
Not even in 10 minutes. I want it in 5 minutes.
5 minutes if possible, right? Now, all these things have brought in actually a lot of pressure on the companies to come out with solutions which can actually enable it, right? Now, how do you enable such new demands from customers, and what can you do to, I mean, you can't really fix the entire system. You already have a set system which has been going on. Maybe you are already doing B2B, you are start getting into B2C and so on. But it is not that easy to bring in some new concepts like quick commerce or any other customer facing demands. So therefore, you have to necessarily look at companies which are agile, which have certain solutions which are available, which can then fit into your overall IT scheme. And why you need to do that? First of all, you may not have the expertise, like the point you earlier raised. And second thing is, you may not have much time. You need to get into the market fast.
Absolutely.
Time to market.
Absolutely.
So time to market, and therefore you also cannot divert multiple resources from your current IT system also. Because you have people there, and you cannot be diverting a significant portion of your current roadmap into these new initiatives. So you are better off looking for a solution provider from outside.
Absolutely. In fact, that very interestingly brings to the fifth point I wanted to discuss around time to value. Right? You said time to market, and to give it probably a little twist, time to value, because especially if I'm a large company.
Before you go further, I would like to, how are you defining this?
Time to value, the way I look at it is that one is speed, right? But how do I realize value out of my investment? So in a simple balance, if I've invested $1 today, when am I getting to see the return? And if you see, especially for larger companies, right, which have much larger change management cycles, deployment cycles, can I launch a new product faster? Can I get into a new geography faster? Can I get into a new target customer segment faster, right? So if I'm a B2B tire distribution company, right, am I able to now start deliveries to smaller retailers in tier 2, tier 3 cities faster? Now, so that is where my time to value realization comes in, that from the time I've invested my money to the time I can get back returns on it, my ROI in some sense, right? And if you look at that time to value consideration, right, again, in that perspective, right, if you look at different kinds of organizations, whether you're a mature, large enterprise or you're a new upcoming company, how would you like to then differentiate this build versus buy decision again for both sides?
Yeah. So, it's valid. I mean, see, the time to value aspect of it is the way you've defined is makes a lot of sense. Also, one more thing which is important is now having put some money, into a project or a solution, it should also last sufficiently long,
Yes.
Right? and it should help you to scale also. I mean, it should solve the problem, get to the ROI from whatever time you would like to, you are defined it. It should also last long enough, right? Otherwise, no, you will have frequent, refreshes which you need to be done. And from that perspective, I think once again, many times it makes sense actually to look for solution provider who is an expert in that domain, let's say logistics, because he knows the fundamental aspects of logistics. He knows all the nitty gritty, like I mentioned earlier, fulfillment, hub management, first mile, mid mile, last mile, what have you, all these aspects of it. And he is also constantly innovating, because he is actually working with maybe multiple clients, constantly innovating to upgrade their own overall product or the SaaS offering in such a way that is actually benefiting everybody, right? So therefore, in some sense, no, you are better off if you are giving that particular functional area, management of that area from an operations perspective, to this solution provider, because he is doing the job which you are supposed to do. Otherwise, you have a responsibility into the future. He is actually doing it. So from that point of view, it makes sense from time to value point of view. But this may not work, for example, on key functions, whether it is accounting or a compliance or customer facing, which an organization would like to manage themselves.
Absolutely. And which actually leads me to a bold question, right? Should CIOs, CTOs, CDOs, and their organization, should they ever feel threatened when they take a buy decision versus build?
No, it is obviously, it's it depends on the personality of the individuals or the DNA of the company as well, whether they are essentially a company. First of all, the answer for this could change in a digitally native company to a traditional company. In traditional companies, yes, I fully agree with you. Typically, the CTOs would like to have full control, or a sense of control. Whether they have it or not is a mute point, so they would like to have a sense of control that yes, my team is controlling the entire solution, good or bad, whatever, right? That could be there in traditional companies. But the good news is, even traditional companies, if you look at it, many of them are getting into digital transformation initiatives. Why are they doing it? Actually, they don't have an option. Right. Because on the B2C side, the whole technology, the implementation solution is going forward so quickly. Even their own clients, who are maybe in B2B, are also demanding that, hey, why can't you deliver it faster? Like the way you said, yes. Why can't the retailers in small cities also ask for a faster deliveries? Yes. Why only metro distributors get all the things? Exactly. So therefore, there is a pressure on traditional companies also. But I agree that from the point of view of this, whether they are feeling comfortable or not, they may not be. But in a digitally native companies, I think the comfort level of outsourcing, or shall we say, going to a SaaS provider, must be much better. And one more reason why digital native companies would be a little more comfortable, I guess, would be because the CIOs and CTOs there would be, I'm making an assumption here that they'll be smart enough to understand that it's much easier and faster time to market. The integration pipelines are many times very standard these days, and therefore they can manage. And secondly, they don't need to divert resources from whatever they are already working, right? Because the SaaS solution is going to come as an out of the box, ready to integrate and so on. The only thing in all this is whether it is a SaaS vendor or the company which is going to take the solution, both should be careful about the change management aspect.
Absolutely. And on that point, really, irrespective of the organization, managing the change management, being bold about what is the outcome you want to drive, right? finally it's a business outcome, right? You want revenue growth for the company, you want profitable growth for the company, and hence taking the decision with that lens, right? So the 5 things that we explored, right? We explored the pace of innovation, we explored the experience and expertise. We looked at what is going to be the opportunity cost of doing things. We looked at also the entire tech debt part, right? And then finally time to value. All of those essentially should form a decision saying, is it best for my business, right? Absolutely. And if it is, then whether it is build or buy, that will always be the right choice, right? So awesome. Thank you so much, KBN. This has been such a pleasure to talk to you about this. Very interesting insights, KBN, right? And I really like the fact that we could cover the whole range of topics and also be bold enough in what we want to suggest for the industry out there. So thank you so much for that, KBN. And thank you everyone for listening in, whether you're watching it live today or you're going to listen into it later on. We're also sharing our email ID here. So if you have any follow-up questions, any clarifications, especially from KBN, who's such a veteran of the industry, we would be very happy to respond back to you. Also, if I might urge you, we have this, and if you have 7 minutes of your time, we have this last mile maturity assessment tool. It can really help you understand the maturity of your last mile operations today. Are you doing well on customer experience or on workforce empowerment, or how is your sustainability score? You can see the QR code behind me here and take 7 minutes of your time, figure it out. We'll have a custom report that will be sent to you, which you can then leverage within your organization. So thank you once again, and thank you, KBN.
Thank you, Mehul. Wonderful talking to you as well. I really enjoyed conversing with you on this very topical topic, if I may say so. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining this. And as Mehul said, in case we need to discuss again, or if you have any questions, happy to answer you. Thank you.